Welcome to SportsBeat KC, the Kansas City Star's daily sports podcast. It is Monday, March 29th, and I'm Blair Kerkhoff. In any other year, we'd spend today talking about the Final Four lineup, but we're only down to the Elite Eight. 2 games tonight, Baylor, Arkansas, and Houston, Oregon State, and 2 on Tuesday, Gonzaga, USC, and Michigan, UCLA. Of course, the NCAA Tournament schedule has been altered this year because of the pandemic. Kansas beat writer Jesse Newell stops by to talk college hoops, and we don't just limit it to Division I. How about those Northwest Missouri State Bearcats? They won their 3rd NCAA Division II championship in the last 4 tournaments on Saturday in walkover fashion. We talk about Coach Ben McCollum's program and his future in Maryville. After a break, we switch gears to talk Kansas football. Did the Jayhawks' next starting quarterback just transfer in? Okay, let's get started talking with Jesse Newell. Jesse, it's the NCAA tournament. We're in the middle of the regional round, right? We've got we're down to the Elite Eight, 4 games to go, and doesn't include a local. I guess Baylor, Big 12, that's local. Arkansas, SEC, local, but no Kansas. It feels a little empty without KU in the Sweet 16. Any of these 4 remaining games intrigue you? Oregon State, Houston, Arkansas, Baylor, USC, Gonzaga, UCLA, Michigan.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of weird how it kind of falls in that way where a lot of the good teams are playing a lot of the not good ones, and there's going to be some heavy favorites to go to the Final Four. But, obviously for obvious reasons, I think the USC-Gonzaga matchup is going to be something to watch. We all talked about it, sort of how that West region, when it first came out, even looking at Kansas' path, like, wow, even if Kansas was able to get by Iowa and able to get by USC, that it would still face Gonzaga to get to the Final Four. So that will be fascinating. Gonzaga has been kind of an unstoppable force so far in this tournament, and USC obviously is showing how good interior defense and how well that can play in a tournament like this. And I think I saw Ken Pomeroy tweet about how this is the top 2-point defense against the top 2-point offense. So that'll be fascinating to watch as well. But yeah, other than that, it's sort of a crazy tournament. There were so many upsets early in the Oral Roberts of the world, but now it seems kind of like a clear path for it to be, the 3 number 1s and a number 2 potentially making the Final Four. And those could be great games too. But yeah, I'm probably most intrigued by Gonzaga USC.
And that one's on Tuesday, along with UCLA, Michigan. Tonight we've got the Oregon State Houston game, and then Arkansas Baylor. I want to ask you something about, Houston intrigues me a little bit. Kelvin Sampson's the coach there, and their best player is Quentin Grimes, former KU player. Is Quentin Grimes the best player? Did he have the best college career of somebody who transferred away from Kansas? I know didn't prepare you for that question, but I couldn't come up with somebody who, as a transfer, ended up with a better career than Quentin Grimes.
I don't think so. Yeah. I mean, it's not coming into the top of my head, and I'm sure there might be people yelling at the podcast right now, like, hey, you idiot, here's the person. But, looking at him, he's 9th on Ken Palm's Player of the Year ranking list. So, I mean, a legitimate All-America type of guy. And, this is one, Blair, you have to feel good for him to start off with. I mean, he was a guy that obviously very ballyhooed coming to Kansas. Bill Self was talking him up when he came. He played on that Team USA team for Bill Self in the summer when Bill Self coached it. So there were really high expectations for him. It didn't work out. It seemed like he sort of wanted to play point guard and wasn't getting that opportunity with Devon Dotson. And then because he was moved to the wing, he was kind of had to become a spot-up shooter, and he didn't make his threes like he is now, which obviously if Kansas had seen him make 38, 39% of his threes, whatever the case may be, there probably would have been more of a spot for him there. But I think in saying this, I've heard a lot of people, and you see this a lot on social media or out on the internet, and kind of grumble like, hey, it sure would have been nice for Bill Self to keep him and all these sorts of things. And obviously there was a lot of things that happened behind the scenes with that, but he did return back closer to home with Houston. And I do want to say this. If it wasn't his mind, again, he's not playing point guard for Houston. So, I mean, that's not the plan. The plan didn't work out at Houston either for him. But if it was the plan at Kansas, if that's what he thought he was going to do, Devon Dotson came back that next year for Kansas. And so if it was in his mind that he needed to go somewhere where he could play point guard and Houston potentially told him that, there was no spot for him at Kansas. You know what I mean? Like Devon Dotson was going to lead that team. So Kansas could have made maybe a long-term decision to keep Quentin Grimes over Devon Dotson, but look how it turned out for Kansas. I mean, Devon Dotson returned, Udoka Azubuike returned, Quentin Grimes left, and KU was the number one team in the nation. Consensus number one team was going to be the number one team in the NCAA tournament, and then COVID called it off. So I think sometimes, things kind of get twisted a little bit where it's like, well, if KU would have kept Quentin Grimes, it'd have been good this year. Well, maybe, but you have to look at the situations and how they happened. And so I think this is really one of those where it worked out well for both sides. The unfortunate part for Kansas is that Houston got Quentin Grimes in a year when there's an NCAA tournament, and Kansas got its really good year with Devon Dotson and Udoka Azubuike when there wasn't an NCAA tournament. So sometimes things turn out the way they do, and really Kansas had no way of getting around that. But would Kansas basically have turned a transferred Quentin Grimes into an overall number one seeded team in the NCAA tournament? I bet your bottom dollar they would have, and that's sort of the trade that Kansas made. And again, it didn't work out in the end, but that's based off of some circumstances that KU never could have predicted.
Yeah, and you mentioned Grimes as a top 10 in Pomeroy. He's also a finalist for the Jerry West, one of the 5 finalists for the Jerry West Award, which is for the nation's top shooting guard. So, listen, if the Cougars end up in the Final Four, it will be because Quentin Grimes had an outstanding season for Kelvin Sampson's program.
Real quick, when you talk about the who did you say the shooting guard was? The list for Quentin Grimes?
Jerry West Award.
Jerry West. Okay, so I vote for the Karl Malone Award. So it is a hoot every single year, I have to say, being on that committee, because for those, just a quick peek behind the curtain, because I find it fascinating every year that I'm on it. Maybe I'm not supposed to talk about this, but I will. Because it's named after Karl Malone, they have a conference call, and Karl Malone gets on there. So it's pretty fascinating. And then the 5 coaches of the players, because it's the power forward, Karl Malone, power forward, the 5 coaches of the players that are finalists come on and talk as well. So it was great because I had this call last week, and Karl he speaks his mind. He'll talk about whatever he wants to talk about and go off on little tangents. But Mark Few opened up the talking for Drew Timme, trying to talk up his guy. And about 5 minutes in, Karl Malone was talking to Mark Few about his fishing excursion to Alaska with John Stockton. So that was all of us listening on this call. It's supposed to be about Drew Timme and how great of a player he is. And all of a sudden, Mark Few and Karl Malone are talking about fishing in Alaska with John Stockton. So anyway, it's a great experience. You mentioned that. I just thought it was funny. But supposedly Bill Self was on that same committee. So me and Bill Self were voting for the best power forward. And we'll see who that turns out to be here in a week or so.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because, I didn't know if we were supposed to talk about these things, but since it's already out there, so I'm on the West committee too. And so
there you go.
Yeah. So it's Jerry West on the conference call talking to, let's see, it was Mark Few, because Joel, I can't pronounce his last name.
Ayayi, yeah.
Ayayi, who I think is a terrific and an underrated player for Gonzaga. He was a finalist. Maceo Teague, a finalist. And so Scott Drew was on the call, and it was great to listen to him. Duarte for Oregon, so we heard Dana Altman. So it's an hour of listening to the type of conversations that we're not often privy to, and really being honest about breaking down their players. Of course, all the coaches are trying to sell their guys, and but anyway, I find it interesting, and I enjoy the conversation every year. So.
It's really good. I do want to mention this too, and this is sort of behind the scenes as well. You do get a smattering of the coaches that are on, and then for the one that I did, Jeremiah Robinson Earl was on there on the list, but Jay Wright was getting ready for his game against Baylor, so he had a recorded message, which works. So I did also think it's fascinating when you hear sometimes there's assistant coaches on there, sometimes there's head coaches on there. It kind of depends on who it is, but I'll never forget a couple years ago, Dedrick Lawson was on there for Kansas, and that was the year 2019, the Auburn game, the one we just talked about when Quentin Grimes was on the team, and it was almost all assistant coaches, and I think it was either the day after, I think it was the literal day after KU lost to Auburn, or the second day after, and so I thought, here's going to come Norm Roberts, of course, they should do that. Sure enough, Bill Self pops on that phone, and I'll have to go back and look who won that year, but I think it was it whoever it was, there was one clear-cut person who was 0%. There was zero doubt they were winning that award. I mean, like, it was like overwhelming. I can't remember if it was Zion or not, but it was someone like that where like there is no doubt at all that. And still, Bill Self popped up on that call, talked up Deidre Lawson for 10 minutes. It's one of those things, like you said, conversations we're not privy to, but also things behind the scenes that we're not privy to, because I just thought it was really cool. Bill Self had no reason to be on that call, and he knew his guy was not going to win, but he took the time, came on, talked 10 or 12 minutes about Deidre Lawson, hoping to get him a few votes. Knew it wasn't going to matter, but still vouching for his guy. So it's interesting to hear some of those things as well, to see what coaches do for their players.
Yeah, after a lousy loss too.
Yeah, that's. I mean, they had just gotten killed by Auburn too. Yep.
Right. Well, sticking with college hoops, the other story, a couple other storylines to discuss. First of all, the transfer portal is up and running and very busy these days. And Gary Bedore wrote, and we will link to his story in the show notes here, but wrote for this morning that Brandon McKissic, the KC Roos, as they're known now, UMKC as they were formerly known, the guard has Kansas as one of 6 finalists, including Missouri and Kansas State. McKissic played point guard for the KC Roos under Billy Donlin each of the last 2 years. Donlin moved him from a wing to the point guard. So it seems like if McKissic ends up choosing Kansas, that could be your starting point guard next year.
It could be, and they are obviously in the market for a point guard. They were in on Tyson Walker, the Northeastern graduate transfer. He ended up going to Michigan State. Ty Washington is a top 50 recruit that's still available as a point guard. They're still in on him. And Brandon McKissic, it sounds like there's a lot of smoke to that fire, if you will. So potentially this week you would think that he might choose Kansas. And for Bill Self, it makes sense if you're looking at sort of the roster construction and trying to figure out the pieces for next year. DeJuan Harris played great down the stretch, but is it a sure thing for Kansas? Not really. And one of the ways that Kansas really struggled, I'd be interested to kind of dive a little bit more into this. I would assume if McKissic played point guard for the Roos that he'd be in a lot of ball screen situations, but KU just didn't have very much success in those areas. Marcus Garrett could get to the rim occasionally, but like not the same as Devon Dotson. He also wasn't as good in the pick and roll, making reads as a guy like a Tyshawn Taylor. Some of those guys have Bill Self's pass. So if you can get a guy who can get in a ball screen, make good reads, find shooters, I mean, that would just help this team so much. They've got 2 good spot-up shooters in Ochai Agbaji and Christian Brown, who I think will shoot better next year. You've got a big man in Dave McCormick who can at least hard roll. You know what I mean? There's a potential for a lob there if you see him in the right spot, but they just didn't have guys who could initiate that offense. So it's kind of been a missing piece for Kansas. So McKissic's numbers, he has good assist numbers, so that seems like it's good with a point guard. And then obviously didn't shoot a ton of threes this past year, but made a good percentage. So we will see what happens with those guys, but McKissic seems like a very, very high likelihood of being a Jayhawk. We'll just have to see how this whole thing plays out.
And he was the Summit League Defensive Player of the Year this year, so second team All Conference. So, okay,
that gets Bill Self's attention too. Yes,
yes, absolutely it would. So, hey, did you happen to watch Northwest Missouri State win its 3rd Division II title in the last 4 tournaments on Saturday?
I did not watch it, but I have watched a lot of their film, and then obviously I'm pretty familiar with Ben McCollum, who is the Northwest Missouri State coach, and they've won, as you put it, Blair, they've won 3 of the last 5 years, but there was no tournament last year, so They've won 3 of the last 4 tournaments. So, I know Ben from a long time ago. He was actually an assistant coach in Emporia State for David Moe way back in the day. And that was one of his first assistant jobs before he took over Northwest at 27 years old. But their offense, Blair, I've got to read this. It is so just to give, a little peek behind the curtain. When I do the quick scout preview, I like to go on Synergy, and they kind of have everything set up in the play types. Okay. Hey, there's spot up, there's pick and roll ball handler, there's pick and roll man, there's cut, there's post up, there's transition. There's all these different ways you can score on offense. So it gives you like a nice overview because it gives you like the percentiles of where these teams are scoring. So, okay, Kansas, they were not good with pick and roll ball handler. That's exactly what I just told you, Blair. They didn't have a Sharon Collins or a Tyshawn Taylor that did that. They're pretty good in post up though, because David McCormick's good at that. They were decent at spot up because, Ochai Abaji could make threes, that sorts of things. I pulled up Northwest Missouri's numbers for all these categories. And let me just go real quick down the road here. Spot up, 91st percentile, excellent rating. Pick and roll ball handler, 97th percentile, excellent rating. Pick and roll man, 93rd percentile, excellent rating. Cut, 99th percentile, excellent rating. Post up, 96th percentile, excellent rating. Transition, 99th percentile, excellent rating. Isolation, 93rd percentile, excellent rating. Offensive rebounds, 64th percentile, good. So got to work on those offensive rebounds, Northwest. You're not getting as much efficiency there. Handoff, 96%, excellent rating. Off screen, 95th percentile, excellent rating. Miscellaneous, whatever else they do, 95th percentile, excellent rating. That's all you got, Blair. That's the only play types that are available at Synergy. They are excellent in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 of the 11 categories. How is this guy not a Division I head coach? He is young. He has won 3 of the last 4 national championships. It's hard to win national championships. The other coaches commenting how he should be, that team that they just had as a Division I coach, they play a fun style. They get out in transition. They share the ball. I'm sure a lot of people saw that viral clip where they passed it like 9 different times with 6 dribbles, got an open 3, just a great thing to watch. So, yeah, I guess looking at those numbers, I think a lot of people should be on the Ben McCollum train, and I'm kind of surprised that he hasn't gotten a shot at Division I at this point. Probably can be very choosy with his options, but anybody who is young, has an offense like that that's fun to watch, and has his team share the ball and has that sense of community like he does, I would think they're going to get a shot at the next level at some point.
His background is Iowa. He's from the state of Iowa, and but he's MIAA, right? His whole coaching career.
And my thing, it would be for him. I mean, again, I'm not inside his head, so I have no idea. But the Valley would seem like a natural thing. Yeah. I think if there was a Valley opening, a lot of times they seem to sort of get maybe the retread types that have worked at higher levels, but not. I know there's always kind of been that stigma, Division II, Division I. But you've seen guys like the John Beelines of the world, where they works at Division III, and then they go to Division II, works at Division II, and then all of a sudden, they popped up in Division I and had success there. So we'll see what happens. But again, he's around my age. I think he's 38, 39. So there should be a lot more coaching in his future. And I know Northwest has taken care of him pretty well while he's there, but I'm sure he'd love that crack at the next level at some point. And at this point, he probably deserves it.
I like the Beeline comp because Beeline, all he did was win everywhere he went, no matter the level, or once he got into the level, he rose from Richmond to West Virginia to Michigan and won everywhere he went because he's just a better coach. It's just a matter of, can you recruit? Can you get the players? And Beeline obviously did everywhere he went, and then coached them up and got to the national championship game with them. So, yeah, I'm a big. I watched the second half of that game, and it was a clinic, and it's a marvel to watch that team. How about he lost two games? He lost twice this year to the same team, to Washburn, and that's just one of those chalk it up to familiarity and.
Well, one on the the 2/3 court shot at the buzzer that went viral on SportsCenter, Top 10, all those things. So, yeah, again, there's a lot of volatility in college basketball. We just saw it and talked about it with the brackets. So for them to run the type of offense that you hear them always repeated on the broadcast, because it's true, it's the most efficient offense in college basketball if you're looking at all levels. It's surprising because, if you think about it, if you had a coach like this that had this sort of success 3 out of 4 years, but did it with a defensive style, maybe you would be like, it's going to be hard to sell to the fan base. Maybe they don't want to watch teams grind them down, but it's like, watch that 25-second clip of them pass, one dribble, pass, 2 dribbles, pass, open 3. I mean, it was fun to watch. It was fun to watch after watching Division I college basketball all year. So, we'll see where this takes him. But like I said, I think if the right opportunity arises somewhere around the Valley, we'll see what Ben McCollum can do at the next level.
Yeah, listen, Mike Krzyzewski sung his praises a couple years ago when they went to Duke for the exhibition game, and Duke led the whole way, but ended up winning by 6. And Krzyzewski just opened his press conference by saying, "Look, we don't play a team like that. We don't see teams like that in the ACC." And part of that was, they don't see teams as efficient as Northwest Missouri State is, and has helped them win the 3 of the 4 last national titles. So, okay, Jesse, let's take a break, and when we come back, I want to talk some football with you. Hey, it's Blair. We have a special subscription offer for SportsBeat KC listeners, unlimited digital access to the Kansas City Star's award-winning sports coverage. Sign up now for 1 year of Sports Pass for access to all the sports news, features, and columns presented on the kansascity.com site, and it's only $30. That's a 40% savings off our regular rate. Your subscription will automatically renew after the initial term at $50 unless you tell us to cancel. Your subscription helps support the sports coverage of kansascity.com and the Kansas City Star, and that support has never been more important. Please visit kansascity.com/SportsBeatKC offer to get this special offer. And as always, thanks for listening. Back with Jesse Newell, who covers Kansas for the Kansas City Star and Wichita Eagle. And we spent some time in the last segment speaking of the revolving door in college basketball with the transfer portal. There's a bit of a revolving door for Kansas football, Jesse, one in and one out in a rather high-profile way this past week. Let's talk about the addition. Kansas picked up a quarterback last week, and it might even end up being their starting quarterback. How bizarre is that?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. So Jason Bean, he's a transfer from North Texas, actually ran a lot of track in high school. So he's known as like a sprinter, like a 100-meter type guy. I think finished 3rd in his class in state of Texas. That takes some wheels to do that. And throwing wise, I mean, I guess it's been inconsistent, but it's funny when you look at numbers that are inconsistent at other teams compared to Kansas, like his inconsistent was 14 touchdowns and 5 interceptions for North Texas and starting over half the games last year. So, I mean, if Kansas got 14 touchdowns and 5 interceptions, they would start talking about where the statue is going to go. So it is a fascinating pickup. And it's also kind of strange at this point in time because one, KU has an interim coach in Emmett Jones, but there really has not been any announcement made that he's going to have it for the entire year. So, I mean, if this is something made before a new coach comes in, that's sort of interesting. But again, this is sort of the Dallas metro area. So, and Jason talked about, hey, this is a big reason that he decided to choose Kansas was he liked the relationship he had with Emmett Jones. So that's one thing that's fascinating. For two, that KU returns Jalen Daniels, and there was a lot of high hopes for him. He just had no offensive line. I tell people it's like Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, only he wasn't Patrick Mahomes, like he was running for his life the whole time and was only, a just turned 18-year-old true freshman. So it's going to be hard to pick up things. And, so we'll see with that with Kansas. Again, a lot of people had a lot of high hopes for Jalen Daniels, but this seems to potentially say, hey, you're not the starter. And then the third thing is they just have so many guys on scholarship at quarterback. When you're talking about a team that's trying to build out of a scholarship deficit or a scholarship hole, you don't want to spend 6 or 7 scholarships on QBs just because you got to get one guy and get it right. So it's KU putting more resources towards that. Obviously, it's worth it if you can get the right guy. But this is fascinating. And with Bean's speed, how they want to utilize him, how they want to use him, that's kind of interesting as well. But I don't think you take this guy at this point of the year if you don't think he's going to be the starter. So if nothing else, I would say Jason Bean and Jalen Daniels going into next year competing for the starting quarterback job, and probably those on a tier above everybody else.
How much eligibility does Jason Bean have?
So he should be immediately eligible, and it kind of gets back to the weird, how much do you want to say he has? Because he was a sophomore last year, a redshirt sophomore, but everybody gets a year back with the pandemic if they want to. But then again, to have that happen, you have to pull okay, so I'm trying to make this simple because it gets confusing. So think about like Mitch Lightfoot this year for KU basketball. Okay. He's coming back to Kansas because his last year was the COVID year, and he's not counting against KU's 13 scholarships. Okay. So that means, he's a super senior, doesn't cost KU anything really in the long scheme. For KU football super seniors this year, same thing like Kwame Lassiter, a receiver. He gets an extra year. He does not count against their 85 number. Okay. So he just basically is a bonus add-on if they pay his scholarship, doesn't count for anything. for anybody who was a junior last year, if they want to stay on an extra year, if they're a senior this year and want to stay on an extra year next year because of COVID, KU has to give them one of the 85 scholarships. Okay. They count against that. So the accounting on this is going to be very different. You know what I mean? Like if you have a backup left guard who wants to stay an extra year, a lot of these schools are going to go, I think we'd rather take the incoming freshman. You know what I mean? Like it's going to cost them a whole scholarship. The exception, though, is if Jason Bean is a talented starting quarterback and wants to play with you for 3 years, it's probably worth the scholarship because we know how important that quarterback is. So I guess I would say technically he will be most likely a junior on the roster this next year with 2 years of eligibility remaining. But if he is good and if he is the starting quarterback for Kansas and he gives them the production they hope he gives them, then I think they would be happy to dip into their 85 scholarships and say, we will take one of these and give them to a guy that we know will be a good quarterback in his super senior season if he wants to remain around. So again, a complicated answer for you, Blair, but he has up to 3 years eligibility remaining. If it doesn't work out, it's likely only going to be 2.
Okay, that's good information. Good to know. On the debit side, the highest rated recruit that Kansas, am I right about that? The highest rated recruit that they've ever had, Quay Davis, wide receiver out of going back to the Dallas Metroplex area, Skyline High. Kansas pulled their offer after reports surfaced that he had been involved with an alleged sexual or just an assault, not sexual, but
domestic abuse. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you. Domestic abuse. Right move by Kansas, was it not? I mean, they almost had to do this.
Well, so basically what happened was, yes, there was a Twitter account that came forward with pictures of a young woman who was in a hospital gown with basically a puffed up eye with some bleeding on her lip, those sorts of things. And then the same account had photos of Quay Davis and said, how do you make this guy into an idol when these are the sorts of things that happen, and domestic violence, those sorts of things. So KU, when that first came out, said that they would basically do due diligence, go check into it, see what would happen, see what they could find out about it. And then the next day came out and said they couldn't exactly determine everything that had happened, but had enough information to feel that they were not going to move forward with Quay Davis on the roster. So, he was, like you said, according to Rivals.com, he's top 60 recruit in the nation. So KU had never gotten a guy that high, at least since the Rivals started doing its rankings in 1999. So there was a lot of excitement around him. But for Kansas, again, you do your due diligence. You check into the facts that are available. You check into people, those sorts of things. And again, after Kansas had done all that, they had decided it's not worth bringing him to campus and extending that or continuing to extend that scholarship. Now, again, he signed with Kansas a month ago, so it's not technically pulling his scholarship. I guess it is technically, but it's sort of a semantics thing. But he was set to be on campus. He's not going to be allowed to be on KU's football team anymore. And yeah, if KU went in and did their research and found that he had caused that damage or that there was reason to believe that, then you would have to think that the proper move would just be to cut ties and to move on. And that's what Kansas did.
Well, the fact that 3 other schools he'd accepted offers from, was it 3 other schools? Texas, Southern California?
SMU, USC, and Texas, I think, were the 3 before that. He had committed 3 other places before Kansas.
Right. Okay. All right. Okay, Jesse Newell, good stuff. And let's do it again soon.
All right. Sounds good, Blair. Thanks.
That'll do it for today. Thanks to our SportsBeat KC production staff of Derek Donovan, Beth Welsh, Monty Davis, Jeff Rosen, Chris Fickett, and Savannah Smith. Tip of the cap to Jesse Newell for stopping by and talking college sports. Links to his stories can be found in the show notes and on kansascity.com. Hey, we've got another deal for you. You can subscribe to Sports Pass for 99 cents a month. That's right, 99 pennies a month. After 3 months, it auto-renews at $5.99 a month unless you cancel. And what a time to subscribe. The Royals, it's opening day this week on Thursday. We're in the middle of March Madness, and of course, it's never not Chiefs season. How do you get it? You go to kansascity.com/sportspass2020. That's kansascity.com/sportspass2020. Do you want more than just sports coverage? Check out the entire Kansas City Star product. Sports news, features, commentary, and analysis, the whole thing. You get all the stories written by my talented colleagues, plus additional national news, sports, and business coverage with the e-edition. The details for all of these deals can be found at accounts.kansascity.com/subscribe. And if you're having trouble hunting down any of these offers, you just send me an email, bkerkhoff@kcstar.com, and I will get you to the right place. So whether it's the Sports Pass or the full subscription, you're getting in supporting the best sports and news coverage in Kansas City and helping us produce programs like SportsBeat KC. Thanks for listening. We'll be back on Tuesday with another episode.